All right, welcome back, everyone, and early Happy New Year to all of you as well. Folks, some interesting updates today. There's some new details on the IRS. I'll show you their actual website. The IRS now has guidelines on how you have to declare and make taxable money from stolen goods. So if you've been stealing things, you need to now tell the IRS so they can tax you on it. This includes bribes and kickbacks, which I'll explain. And they have some other things as well, like they mention illegal drugs and other illegal activities. So, for those of you who've been wondering whether taxation is theft, it's hard to say, but we do now know that theft is taxable, at least. The theft and taxes seem to go hand in hand like peas and carrots. So, latest update on this, I'll be showing you the actual IRS website. I'll go over this. I'll have a look at it, folks. Also, there's some interesting updates that the U.S. Vaccine passport system, they're working on a lot of different fronts, actually has a lot of ties to the Chinese Communist Party. And when you understand the data laws in China, the laws under the Chinese Communist Party that require companies to make data available to them, if you're dealing with the type of information that these vaccine passport systems use, this could expose a lot of Americans potentially to, well, monitoring by the Chinese Communist Party. And this is not just a normal system, this is one tied to the US government as well. I'll show you what we have on that. And big update as well, Ghislaine Maxwell, the associate of Jeffrey Epstein, has now been found guilty. She was found guilty on all the charges for sex trafficking. But there's some interesting caveats to it because it looks like the people who she was trafficking kids to are not going to be charged. When is it that, I mean, great, go after the human traffickers. She's been found guilty. She's not been sentenced yet. But when is it where, the individuals who are purchasing these kids and they have the information don't seem like they're going to be facing charges currently? Folks, I'll be showing you what happened with that. We'll go over it. A lot to talk about. Just briefly as well, we do now have a new channel. That's Crossroads Highlights. Wow, thank you, folks. I'm actually on Crossroads Highlights watching. Rams is silent. Appreciate it. Folks, really appreciate the support. So again, if you haven't jumped over to Crossroads Highlights, that is the new home of Crossroads. Actually, we're going to be just doing the Q&As there soon. And we're going to be migrating the whole channel to the new one. I also have some big updates on the channel. I'm going to be, don't freak out. I'm going to be moving to one Q&A a week soon, but I'm going to be transitioning to do some investigative reporting. Some stuff I've been talking about doing for a long time. I'm going to get more on the front lines is the plan. And I have some big plans for this channel. I'll be telling you all about them soon, but a lot of stuff in the works. I'll be telling you about that later on tonight as well. More details to come, folks. A lot going on. And that said, let's jump into the first story in just a bit. Yeah, folks, good to see you all here. Kevin E. said unnerving. Yeah, folks, appreciate all the support. Good seeing y'all here. Let's jump into the first story. I want to talk about what's happening with the IRS because the new update is pretty bizarre. The new update's pretty bizarre. Now, it used to be said that crime doesn't pay. At least when I was a kid, that was a saying. But now, according to the IRS, not only does crime pay, but it's also a taxable asset. And they want a cut of that. They want a cut of your crime. They want in on it. They're not trying to stop it. They want in on it. Now, the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, which notably is actually a fairly new organization, now, they're now saying that criminals need to report income from crime when they file their taxes. So, folks, if you or someone you know is a criminal and you're going to file taxes, you should know now that you have to declare the value of goods you've stolen. If you're selling drugs, you need to tell the IRS the amount of money you're making by selling drugs. And also, if you're a politician and you're getting bribes or kickbacks, they actually have guidelines now on how to declare your bribes and kickbacks so that they can be properly taxed. I'll show you the actual IRS website. Let's go over it. Now, folks, this is the IRS website. I'm not showing you an article here. This is the actual IRS website. It now states, and this is an exact quote from their website, quote, income from illegal activities such as money from dealing illegal drugs must now be included in your income on Schedule 1. That's Form 1040 for the drug dealers out there. Line 8Z or on Schedule C, which is Form 1040 as well. So for all you drug dealers, remember this, or anyone else doing, making money off illegal goods. There's some different elements to this, though, which I'll be explaining in just a bit. And they said that's, of course, if it's from your self-employment activity. So if you're a self-employed drug dealer or a self-employed individual selling illegal goods, keep in mind this applies to you. So, folks, this is actually under a section with the subtitle "Illegal Activities." That's literally the subtitle, illegal activities. Now, it notes in a separate area that, quote, illegal bribes and kickbacks, and that's the actual section on it, illegal bribes and kickbacks, and it says they're non-deductible expenses, but you have to follow it, because if you're a politician or a business leader and you're getting bribes and kickbacks, it's important to note that it says here, the IRS says, quote, if you receive a bribe, include it in your income. And so you don't have to make your bribes separate for the IRS. You have to include it in your income. And so make sure that if you're getting bribes or taking bribes, or if you're giving people bribes, make sure you tell them that they have to declare that to the IRS now, and you just merge it into your normal income like your normal pay. Now, while clarifying the taxes that the IRS wants from kickbacks, it actually goes a bit deeper into this. The IRS states directly, quote, you must include kickbacks, side commissions, push money, or similar payments you receive in your income. And so, an important note as well for those of you receiving bribes and kickbacks. And also, if you've been stealing other people's property, the IRS is now saying that also needs to be taxed. So this is important. This is under a new stolen property section. That's the actual quote, the stolen property section. And it's the IRS says this on their own website, quote, if you steal property, you must report its fair market value in your income in the year you steal. In the year you steal it, unless you return it to its rightful owner in the same year. So if you stole it, but you plan to give it back like next year, you still have to declare it. But again, you have to go by the fair market value of the items you've stolen. And so I think that's on you to determine what the fair market value is. And I'm not clear if that's the street value or if it's like the price tag in the stores. But you need to tell the IRS now, because they need to have a cut of what you're stealing if you are a thief. And so just for those of you curious as well, that's under the stolen property section of the IRS tax guidelines. Sorry, I'm trying to be serious here, folks. Oh man, this is the actual IRS website. Hey, hi Mountain, thank you. Said so. Super chats work here. Congratulations. Yeah, super chats are back, folks. Join us on the new Crossroads Highlights channel. Thank you, High Mountain, also. Now, the Erie County Sheriff's Office in Buffalo, New York, actually posted a viral note on Facebook on December 28th that was actually a bit tongue-in-cheek. They actually, you could read it either way. The Sheriff's County in Buffalo, New York, Erie County, they said this. They said, basically, it's tongue-in-cheek, but also helps people point attention to what the IRS has been doing. And they wrote this on Facebook. I'll show you their post. It says, attention all car thieves. The stuff you stole from people's vehicles in 2021 must be claimed on your income taxes. And it says, if you need an itemized list of property, call us at 716-853-2903, and a deputy or detective will be happy to meet you with the list. It would be our pleasure. So we'll see. you know, what's the saying? Birds of a feather flock together, right? Of course, the sheriff's office seems to be kind of tongue in cheek with this. The sheriffs, the ones I've met, seem to be pretty unhappy with the essentially legalized theft that has been taking place in other parts of the U.S. And we'll see how many thieves, drug dealers, and people taking bribes choose to actually declare these assets as taxable, and what the legal implications of that are. Because, folks, we're in unknown territory. This is untreaded territory, and we'll see where it goes from here, because it's quite bizarre. Now, a few more stories to go into. I want to talk about what's happening with China briefly, because I mentioned previously that they've brought back some of the lockdowns in China. On a pretty large scale, and this could actually have a lot of implications for the U.S. as well as other parts of the world, not just in terms of the possible optics of it and the CCP trying to push its policies even more. But it could actually have a lot of impacts on global food supplies, because they're having food shortages. I'll show you some information on that. And it can also have some serious impacts as well in the global shipping crisis, because, there's concern it might come back much stronger maybe than before. Before we go into that, folks, our sponsor tonight is Secure. So big things out to our sponsor. Over 155 million Americans were affected by data leaks in 2020. The average American had their personal data stolen about 4 times over the past year, meaning most of you probably had it stolen at least once. People get anxious because they can't protect their online data or their online activity, but now there's a new email and messenger app called Secure. That's Secur. They can give privacy and security for sending emails and messages. Secure's server and data center are hosted in Switzerland. That's important because Switzerland has the strictest data privacy laws in the world. Secure is also the only private and secure email and messaging app that does not rely on big tech companies like Amazon, Google, or Microsoft, which also means it's not subject to the Intrusive Cloud Act, where these companies work hand in hand with some government agencies, technically. Secure also does not ask for your phone number. It does not mine your data, and it does not upload your contacts like all other applications of this type tend to do. Secure Messenger functions by adding people you know and then adding their secure numbers. You can still chat with non-secure users also by sending them an invite. In this way, folks, you're protected from hackers getting onto your phone, and you have full privacy while on the app. Now, it's $5 for the messenger or $10 for the email and messenger package. You can visit secure.com today for a free 7-day trial, or use the promo code Joshua to get 25% off. And folks, big thanks out to Secure for sponsoring tonight's episode. Hey, Mimi Lee, thanks for the support also. We have Super Chat again, folks. Those of you watching on the old Crossroads channel, jump over to the new one. You can find the link on the homepage of our YouTube channel, Crossroads. The new channel is Crossroads Highlights. We're going to be migrating the show over to the new channel. So jump in. We have Super Chat again. It's lively again. We got everything going on again. And that said, let's jump into the next story. It looks like Okay, let me step back. The lockdown policies are kind of divided right now. Really, I'll get into it tonight. The CDC in the U.S. right now is really kind of rolling things back. They're pulling things back. The Biden administration is suggesting they're going to put more weight on the states. Ironically, that was Trump's policy. Let the states handle this because according to normal federal law, that's how it's done. And we'll see whether the Supreme Court allows Biden's mandates to go through. Chances are they might not stand. We'll see. But of course, states are choosing their paths as well. Actually, Democrats are even divided on this. Some Democrat-run states are backing off the mandates. Some states, mainly New York and like California, are advancing the mandates. And notably, the incoming mayor of New York, the mayor of New York is suggesting he will keep the mandates for all businesses in place, which requires all businesses to enforce vaccine mandates for their employees. But it seems like, again, there's a divide right now. Some places are opening up, some places are closing down. And this is basically because the Omicron variant, there's a lot of mixed data on it. It seems that some of the rapid tests and the testing kits, ironically, right after the Biden administration just bought a ton of them, they actually really can't detect the Omicron variant so well. I'll show you the data on this. They're also now showing that their estimates on hospitalizations from the Omicron variant have actually been highly inflated, not to mention that it's not really as deadly as previous strains, which is leading a lot of people, and also it tends to infect people vaccinated or unvaccinated at not that different of rates, depending on which data you're looking at. Some put vaccinated as even higher, some put it as lower. It depends where you're looking. But basically, where we're at right now in this whole vaccine movie playing out. Now, imagine you're watching this like Old West movie, and everybody just bought their snake oil. All right, everybody's at home and they're drinking it, and they're like, okay, I'm totally immune from all diseases now. I got my magic charm that I can wrap around my face, and it protects me from all diseases. My lucky charms are there. I got my snake oil. I'm protected from any pandemic. And then all the people drinking their snake oil start realizing, oh, wait a minute. All the people drinking snake oil are still getting sick. This is the moment in the movie where they're like, wait a minute, what in tarnations? And they look over in the corner and they see a big bag of feathers and a big barrel of tar, and things start coming together. We're at that part right now in the pandemic, basically, because they keep telling you, oh, you're still getting sick. Just keep drinking your snake oil. I know you're still getting sick. You need to keep drinking the snake oil. Just take another bottle of it. You should be fine. The solution to the snake oil not working is to drink another bottle of the snake oil. Basically where things are at. But we also see things getting tighter in some places. We see some countries getting much more strict. And actually, this is going to have some big impacts. Real quick. Hey, Just Vicky's. Thanks for the support. Yeah, thanks for getting us through 2021, Josh. My pleasure. Another year to go. We'll see how it is. Hey, Great Clouds. Thanks also. And Ethnos38. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to have Super Chat back, right? Folks, all jokes aside, things are actually looking pretty grim in China right now. Now, basically, you have a couple things happening. You have the virus lockdowns coming back again, and they're getting worse. There's a food crisis. They locked down a city of 13 million people. And they basically haven't been able to go out and buy food for 8 days. A lot of them didn't have time to prepare. Keep in mind, New York City is 8.8 million people. Xi'an, where they have these policies, is 13 million. Imagine if in the U.S., the federal government locked down New York, didn't tell New Yorkers ahead of time, and people were writing on social media that they're starving to death, and the government was basically ignoring them. That's where Xi'an is right now. And also with this, there's concerns of expanding shutdowns in China and the way this is going to basically impact the global market. The CCP, because it's integrated into the global economic system, if China sneezes, the rest of the world gets a cold. That's kind of the saying, right? Here we see these policies continuing like this. Hey, Mr. Classic, thank you. Now, let me get into this. Now, I mentioned previously that the CCP put a city of 13 million people on lockdown, right? We talked about this previously. And a report said that people weren't able to go out and get food. There's some new information on this. The lockdowns, again, are in the city of Xi'an, which is now getting on its 8th day. They're on day 8 now there, of people being unable to leave their homes to even buy food. There are reports showing that starving residents are making posts online trying to buy food, asking for help. And videos have shown police arresting people as they attempt to leave and find food. So not only are they not allowed to leave, if you try to leave and find food somewhere, you're getting arrested in China right now. Now, one netizen posted on China's Weibo, which is the biggest social media in China, that said, "We want food, seriously. There's none available online. We can't go out. The building has been sealed for 10 days. This is 8th day of lockdown. Some areas have been locked down even longer, they're saying. They said even instant noodles are gone. Hungry. Another netizen wrote, "I have not had food for 2 days." Now, this is, again, I'll give some background on this, but right now, during a live stream press conference on December 29th, the CCP was doing this. Residents were actually asking for access to places to buy food, but the requests were not given any response. Shortly after that, the CCP even turned off they turned off the comment section. So, again, folks, 13 million people severe lack of food. We saw this coming. We've been talking, if you've been watching Crossroads, we've been talking about it for a long time now. The writing's been on the wall for a long time. The CCP previously was giving alerts allegedly internally to CCP members, Communist Party members, telling them to begin storing food. Those alerts were leaked publicly, and it caused panic buying in China. Shortly after that, even though the CCP was denying the legitimacy of those posts, Xi Jinping, the head of the CCP, rolls out a new campaign. And this is a campaign against wasting food. And as part of that, they go after these extreme eating videos, basically kind of like YouTubers, people online, where they get tons of food and they eat all kinds of wacky food. Part of the campaign against wasting food was targeting them. And so the CCP started making this whole campaign around being frugal with your food, not eating too much food, right after this big alert comes out saying there's going to be a food shortage. Then what happens? Floods in Brazil. Not floods. First, there was a dry spell in Brazil. Now there are floods, including at least one of the dams breaking. More dams look like they're going to be breaking. That's the breadbasket of China. China gets a lot of its food from Brazil. In addition to the global shipping crisis, in addition to floods and other things in China as well, and in addition to the CCP, eventually, even before this latest flood in Brazil, the CCP sending out alerts finally openly telling Chinese people to begin hoarding food. So you had the brewings of a food crisis in China. Now the CCP is actually, in a weird way, actually exacerbating the problem, making things even worse. Because now not only do you have the food crisis, not only do they have this already brewing, but the CCP is like making an entire city of 13 million people like the sacrificial lamb of this policy. Now they're doing this policy, lockdown of a city of 13 million, because they've had like a bit over like 1,000 outbreaks of the Omicron variant, which is bizarre. Let me explain a bit more what's happening. And I won't go over what we talked about in the last episode, because you have internal fighting among CCP leaders. It seems right now there's chaos among the CCP leadership. There's a lot of other problems brewing right now. This could tie into some things we talked about previously on where things may be going, which is, remember we talked about it last year. I was talking about some of the internal discussions happening in China that, of course, sources were telling us about. Basically, what the CCP was talking about at that time was redoing the Cultural Revolution. We see already signs that Xi Jinping, the head of the CCP, is actually adopting many of those same measures, many of the same programs he saw during the Cultural Revolution, which was 1960s, 1970s under Mao Zedong, where they were killing, quote unquote, rightists, where they were killing landlords, anybody who was deemed against the party they were purging. You also had internal party purges, really bloody time in history in China under the CCP. They wanted to redo that. We see now a lot of policies that reflect that, including in using the same names in some case. So it seems like the CCP is showing signs of repeating a lot of that. At the same time, though, as the situation in China gets worse, traders, like Wall Street type guys around the world, they're allegedly concerned the lockdowns could lead to a new supply chain collapse. Zero Hedge reports that traders are now, quote, freaking out as the CCP brings back these lockdowns. Now, it notes that last time the regime closed its megaports in Yantian and Ningbo, this had ripple effects on the global supply chain. And remember as well, even in the US officials have been saying that basically, federal government, they've been saying they basically can't deal with the whole supply chain issue, solve it completely, basically until every country in the world ends its lockdowns, until they deal with the virus outbreak in every part of the world. These things are here to stay. And if the CCP wants to use the virus outbreaks as an excuse to basically strangle the world, essentially using this supply chain lockdowns, they can do it. And it looks like it may be heading in that direction again. Now, Zero Hedge stated this. It says, it is only a matter of time before the rapidly spreading Omicron leads to a similar port lockdown and a fresh round of paralysis in trans-Pacific shipping. Now, this isn't absolute, because we actually see this happening as some other shifts are taking place. And I don't know what's going on the political level behind the scenes. It seems like you have a lot of different groups kind of vying for control of the geopolitical system right now. You have, of course, the U.S. trying to maintain the American-led order, the Pax Americana, while at the same time kind of relinquishing a lot of that. You have a lot of these UN type groups trying to establish their system. The CCP has a lot of influence through that. The Chinese Communist Party has its own agenda. Then you have other groups having their own interest as well. World Economic Forum, this whole Great Reset idea, a lot of them as well have their own interests. But we're seeing an interesting shift with all this, that as the CCP tries to kind of seize this from the world, countries are actually pushing back against it. Now, one example of this, countries have been pulling their supply chains out of China. You might remember Japan and India were even paying companies to pull out. There's been a push to remove, to basically get the supply chains out of China. And there's going to be, I'm going to go into a bit more on why this is significant in just a bit. But as they're pulling these supply chains out, this also means businesses have kind of a stigma of being there still. The U.S. enhanced that even further with this new anti-slavery bill. Now, specifically, this new anti-slavery bill, which the Biden actually put through, which is interesting. And it's a big move. This basically bans the sale of any goods from Xinjiang, also called East Turkestan. Xinjiang is where you have the Muslim Uyghurs. Now, any company that's been buying goods from there, remember Disney co-produced with CCP officials in Xinjiang on their movie Mulan, and they got dragged through the ringers for doing it. A lot of companies work with it. Folks, this is pretty much the entire garment industry, most of the garment industry, because Xinjiang slave labor provides a lot of the cotton, ironically, and including companies like Nike and others that try to talk about, the America's evil history of slavery. They're literally buying slave cotton, a lot of these companies, from Xinjiang. And so they're going to be in hot water now as they try to figure out a new supply chain. Also, a lot of the automotive industry, a lot of companies get products from slave labor. Now, just banning the sale of goods from Xinjiang is not going to fully solve this, because the CCP can just kind of change the label, so to speak, but it's a good start. At the same time, too, they also take these people and ship them around. The Muslim Uyghurs, they will ship them throughout China for slave labor in other parts of the country. And so this bill is a great start dealing with this. It is not going to fully fix it, but it's a big start, and it does create a serious, it creates a lot of controversy for companies that are dealing in slavery in China. A lot of big companies, folks, like even Walmart and Sam's Club, are having to kind of pick their sides now, and they're making public statements. They're getting, if they blacklist items, they're getting pushback from the CCP right now. Both Walmart and Sam's Club have done that, and they've gotten pushback from the CCP. But again, slave labor in China is not even just limited to Xinjiang. Again, they ship the Muslim Uyghurs to all over the country. It's also not limited to Muslim Uyghurs. They have slave labor camps for not even just religious people, but many people. Falun Gong practitioners are a huge source of slave labor in China, because they're a persecuted religious group, 70 million to 100 million people. You might remember a while back there was this story where people had bought Halloween decorations in the U.S., and they found a note in the Halloween decoration box from a slave in China who practiced Falun Gong, basically begging the outside world for help. A lot of people have come out and given testimonies of the type of products they're making in China as slaves. And a lot of companies are buying these goods made by slavery. And at the same time that there's this new stigma against Chinese slavery, finally, really the CCP is also increasing its hostility towards other countries, which is also causing a lot more troubles. That being said, the CCP, even though they're weakened in a lot of ways, they're also trying to basically weaken the global economic system right alongside them, it seems. And so if they do want to further weaken the global economic system, they can hit the supply chain again. They can actually pull a lot of strings in Latin America and in Africa and even a lot of Asia Pacific region countries, although there's a pushback against them now. And they can cause a lot of damage right now because they still do have control over a lot of global assets. Until that system is uprooted, they do have a lot of geopolitical influence. And so even though they're weakened, it's like you cut off the head of a snake. Yeah, it's much less threatening, but that thing can still bite. That's kind of where the CCP is at currently. And again, they're trying to drag the world down with them with this. All right, I want to go a bit into what's happening with the U.S. vaccine passport system that actually has ties to the CCP. I also want to go into the Ghislaine Maxwell trial because she has now been found guilty of human trafficking, child sex trafficking to be specific. But first, folks, let's jump into some questions. And hey, we got Super Chat again. So again, if you're not watching us on the new YouTube channel or Crossroads on Epic TV, be sure to jump over to the new YouTube channel. We're going to be discontinuing the old one. It's now Crossroads Highlights. And so we'll get into some questions. Hi, Mountain. Appreciate the support. You said we need to make up your lost super chats. Here's my contribution. I appreciate it. Thank you. Molly John, appreciate the support. And Elizabeth Hefner, appreciate the support. Yeah, really, folks. Thank you. All right, before we jump into questions, though, again, if you want to support Crossroads, a great way to do it is Epic TV. We have a lot of other programs there. If you haven't checked it out, we even have our own drama now, which is I've been watching. It's really good. It's called A Good Cop. That's technically produced by our sister media, which is NTD, but it's really good, really well done. I also do a lot of exclusive content there as well. I just published an interview you folks might be interested in. It's with Representative Tom Tiffany. It was during my trip at the border. Okay, just for clarity, I mentioned previously that I'll give a few details on this. I'm going to be doing a lot more investigative reporting and some updates with that. This was one of the interviews I did when I was at the border. This is not, I mentioned I'm working on a feature about that whole reporting trip. This is not that special feature, but it's actually pretty interesting in itself. Basically, Representative Tiffany he went down to the Darien Gap. He witnessed a lot of the human trafficking taking place. And he's detailed in this interview we did how the United States, the federal government, is actually facilitating what he calls one of the world's largest human trafficking operations. And we really go in depth into the U.S. side of that, how the federal government is getting involved in human trafficking, how the United Nations under the OIM, or IOM, it depends on where you're at, the International Organization of Migration, interestingly, under the UN Human Rights Council, which the CCP heads, they're one of the main facilitators of this, including giving payments to the illegal aliens or people trying to illegally migrate here. They give them money. They give them plane tickets, all kinds of stuff. I'll be explaining this more in depth. And also how NGOs and nonprofits, charity organizations, are working hand in hand with this system because they get kickbacks from it. And this is a very large, very lucrative system that is making money for these individuals paid for by your tax dollars or through the United Nations, which actually comes heavily through U.S. tax dollars as well, to engage in human trafficking. Let me show you a quick trailer of that interview we did. The full interview is exclusive Epic TV, but you can find a pretty long segment of it on our new YouTube channel as well. I'll show you a clip now.
Illegal immigration is on steroids here in America. We're going to have over 2 million people that come into our country illegally this year.
Well, you were saying that essentially the federal government is running one of the biggest human trafficking operations.
It's very clear that the United States government is facilitating.
The president remains committed to putting in place a humane and orderly immigration system that includes a range of programs for individuals to apply to stay in the United States.
People in our government know exactly what they're doing at this point. They knew exactly what was going to happen. They know that people die in these mass migrations. They know people, especially women, are sexually assaulted. They know the misery that goes with this, and it's completely unnecessary. Yet they let it go on. That's why I say that our United States government is complicit.
Yeah, folks, pretty serious stuff. Again, the full interview is exclusively on Epic TV, but we're going to be posting pretty long clips on the new YouTube channel as well, so be sure to check it out. Also, yeah, I'm in addition to that interview, I'm also working on something bigger on that topic. I've been talking about it for a little bit. You gotta forgive me. Some updates on that as well. But folks, yeah, it's pretty serious stuff. Basically, what you have happening right now is I went to the border I was there for a week. I was traveling with Michael Yan. He's a war correspondent, and Masako Ganaha, a Japanese journalist from Okinawa, really fantastic journalists. We were there for about a week touring the border. We went into Mexico. We talked to a lot of different individuals there, including Representative Tiffany, including one of the sheriffs in one of these border towns, including some other very interesting folks, including some of the illegal migrants. And I went down when my main role is I'm an investigative reporter. And so when I go and do investigations, I don't like to start with a conclusion. I think this is an unfortunate and not very good shift in journalism, where a lot of journalists kind of have a preformed idea of what they think they're going to find. And because they have these preformed ideas, they're not open to finding new information. But I went there, with my understanding of what the border crisis was, thinking, I want to focus on human trafficking. I was thinking it was going to be like cartels running checkpoints at the borders and giving people wristbands, which still does take place. What I found shocked me, and really shocked me, that the human trafficking operation is not what you're being told. This is a regulated, highly organized, facilitated operation being financed by the U.S. government, working through NGOs and charitable organizations, and through the United Nations International Organization of Migration, OIM, or IOM, depending on where you're at. And yeah, the IOM has facilities at the Darien Gap. They have facilities all along this whole trail. They work with governments throughout Latin America. They give people these little prepaid visa cards. They pay them money. They buy them. There's groups that buy them plane tickets, buy them bus tickets. We found these discarded all over the shore on the Mexican side of the border, just littering the ground. The crisis you're being told about is frankly just a big illusion, folks. This is an organized operation, full-on human trafficking, being financed by your taxpayer dollars. And watch the interview I did with Representative Tiffany. I'm going to have something more in depth on that. Briefly on that, before we jump into all the questions, I'm mentioning again, and okay, hear me out, right? I'm going to be doing just one Q&A a week pretty soon. Again, that's just going to be on Sundays, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be transitioning, doing a lot more interviews like this. My focus is going to be more on getting on the front lines again. I feel like I've been kind of I don't want to be a desktop journalist. You know what I mean? So I'm going to be more on the front lines, getting out there, getting the real stories, doing a lot more on the ground investigations, and trying to find ways to turn these around a bit faster. I think before I have a few in the works right now that are pretty big. I think you folks are really going to like them. But I want to do some that can turn around faster, because I believe that there's a lot that needs to be told, a lot that needs to be investigated. And frankly, I get so many leads that I can't follow them all, and I see other media not following them. And I think this is going to be much more impactful. I think it's going to be much better for all of you as well. And I frankly think you're going to like it a lot better. So I know I love doing the Q&As. We'll feel it out. If I can get on a good track and I can start doing these things regularly, maybe we'll try to bring back more of the Q&As. But I'm going to be still doing one a week on Sundays, and also we'll figure it out. We'll make it good, folks. So be sure to tune in. I'm doing, if you haven't noticed, a lot more original analysis too. I don't just want to be a newscaster. You know what I mean? Again, I think the world right now needs some real solid journalism, and not just following the pack, if you know what I mean. We need some real frontline reporting again. And so I'm going to get to the front lines for y'all. And I have a lot in the works already, some of which I haven't really fully told y'all about. But I've been pretty busy, and some really good stuff in the works. So again, folks, we're also going to be discontinuing the old YouTube channel. Crossroads Highlights is the new channel. So be sure, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Crossroads Highlights is the new Crossroads. And folks, really thanks for the support as well. Go big or go home. Thank you for the support. Rosemary 2002, thank you. I really appreciate it. Lisa Bell, thank you. He said, I've been seeing articles that China's GDP is collapsing. It is. And that's even with their doctored numbers, it's collapsing. And he said, and they're falling out of favor with Wall Street. They are. Even George Soros is telling BlackRock to divest, which is a really bizarre shift. All right, folks, that said, let's jump into some questions. And again, I'll keep you updated on some other stuff we're working on. A lot of stuff in the works right now. Some really good stuff. I think you'll like it. But I'm being a bit vague right now. Give me a bit of time. I got some good stuff for you. All right, so first up is from Viv B. He said, question, have you heard of Project Bluebeam? I have heard about this. It's some UFO thing or something. He said some of the UFO reveals by U.S. government, but it's a fake using image projection technology. I've heard of it. I have not researched it well enough to say whether it's true or not. I am familiar with the project by that name. I don't know enough about it to give details on it. Speaking of UFOs, though, folks, 2020 was wild enough where like the U.S. military actually released UFO footage and people didn't even really seem to care because it was almost like everyone's focused on all this other crazy news and like UFOs. I don't got time for that, basically. Just to kind of put things in perspective, that the military released UFO footage, and not necessarily aliens, but unidentified flying object footage. And yeah, pretty much the world was like, didn't care, like the stories barely got any attention. At the same time, you might have seen some recent stories that NASA is talking about hiring religious leaders to try to prepare people for the idea of, life, extraterrestrial life. It's unclear whether they actually mean anything by that or whether they're just doing some scientific experiment, like social project. Who knows? But yeah, there's been a lot of news on the UFO front for those who follow it. And it's like official sources like the US military and the Air Force and so on. And I haven't been posting because people don't seem to care about it, frankly. It's just putting things in perspective, right? Catherine Stewart, really appreciate it. Thank you. Said, thank you for all the news and insights you share with us. My pleasure. And again, we're also going to be doing a lot more posts, so don't worry. Yes, I'm going to be doing fewer Q&As. Again, just the one on Sundays, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll find a way to make that something bigger as well for y'all. But we're also going to be having a lot more interviews, a lot more episodes of, I think, more variation, so we can get some real good experts for y'all. Again, some real good stuff in the works, and also the special features, which is going to be one of my main focuses. Lug Puka, he said, Josh, since you're going to one Q&A a week, would you consider going to 1.5 hours? I would consider it. I'd have to talk to my team because, we're a small team. There's just a few of us, but let me run it by him first. I would not mind, but let me run it by him first. We'll see. Seymour Butts. He said, Josh, with all the evidence you have gathered on COVID, do you still think it originated in China or was it actually made here in the U.S.? The evidence, based on what I have with COVID, y'all can watch the documentary I did over a year ago now. All the information I'd say actually still holds up. You can still find that on our YouTube channel. You can still watch it on Crossroads, on Epic TV as well. That's epochtv.com. We still have it published. We still have not had to publish a correction on it, even though we were criticized of spreading fake news and Facebook banned it and so on. I mean, honestly, if I was a petty person, I could probably sue him for a lot of money for that. I don't care that much, to be honest. I think people can judge for themselves the validity of information, but I can say proudly we have not had to publish a correction on that. You can check it out. We actually go over a lot of the evidence. Basically the idea when I was looking into this was very basic. It was just, okay, it was during the early days of the pandemic. The documentary is called Investigating the Origins of the Wuhan Coronavirus. It was before they even came up with the name COVID-19. And it was just very simple. We were hearing all kinds of random claims, all kinds of wild news, and nobody could make sense out of it. You had scientific journals publishing really significant findings and then retracting their findings not because it was fake, but because the CCP was pressuring them. Lancet and so on. You had a lot of journals unpublished information. It was ridiculous. Remember as well that the sequence, the virus sequence, was actually released. Remember that? When Chinese researchers released the virus sequence, and then the CCP disappeared the scientists who released it, and then made all the different scientific, quote unquote, publications in the US delete it like it never happened. Remember that? Because the virus sequence was showing some really concerning signs that this thing may have been lab manipulated, whether natural origin technically or not. I mean, there was some wild stuff. We went over all this evidence in that documentary. Now, based on my personal sense, in the documentary, we don't jump to hard conclusions. I just show you the evidence pointing, was it a lab origin? Was it natural? I think we debunked pretty strongly it wasn't from the seafood market, the wet market, the Xi'an seafood market, to be specific. We show evidence pretty strongly it did not come from there. I think we debunked that claim pretty well. But we do look into natural origin possibility. We look into lab leak possibility. We look into man-made possibility. Based on what I've seen, I would say that I do believe I believe it was leaked from a lab based on the incidents at this Wuhan Institute of Virology. Whether it was man-made or natural, I'm not sure. I do know, I can say for a fact that there were programs to manipulate SARS viruses. There were programs to manipulate, for example, the horseshoe bat virus in ways that very closely fit the description of what we're seeing now, which would technically be a chimeric virus. We're taking a natural virus and you're altering it. Based on this, I'd say without a doubt it came from China, but I would say these programs also had the support of individuals like Fauci and so on. And so there was U.S. involvement, and not just U.S. involvement, but a lot of countries' involvement in this. NIAIH heavily involved through mediums with these programs in China. And so I'd say there's a lot of people who were involved in very dirty things, and they wanted to cover it up, whether with the intention of covering up the COVID origin or with the intention of covering up the other really unethical programs they were doing in China that people may have found if they began researching this. And frankly, I'd say that evidence does show, based on the emails of Fauci and others that have been made public, that they had interest in making sure people did not look into this. And I suspect that was one of the reasons why my documentary got deleted off YouTube or off Facebook and called fake news and attacked as badly as it was, even though, again, all the information still holds up. And again, watch it yourself, judge for yourself. Lisa Bell, thank you. You said, I've been seeing article. Oh, we went over that. Thank you. Cameron Bacon, good to see you. You said, Josh, if foreign governments and organizations are facilitating illegal immigration into America, is that not an act of war? Well, this is one of my big suspicions with this, is that, remember that in Europe right now, one of the issues you have with some of the migrant crisis going on is that it is being talked about as a unconventional form of warfare, that you can weaponize mass migration movements. Interestingly, IOM it uses both acronyms: International Organization of Migration or Organization of International Migration. UN organization, specifically under the UN Human Rights Council, which China is in charge of. They not only are facilitating the border crisis in the U.S., they were also the ones managing the Afghan resettlement. And I have good sources talking about the very high likelihood that the Taliban was orchestrating a lot of that and putting their own people in. Because remember, the U.S. basically let the Taliban run the checkpoints. OIM is running that as well, or OIM, they're also running that. And they're also running a lot of the migrant crisis in Europe. And so if you understand the CCP is one of the main players behind the organization that's under, there's a high probability that it is at least tying into some kind of foreign interest. At the same time, though, the U.S. government is supporting this as well. The U.S. government is backing a lot of these programs as well. So it's hard to say whether if it's an act of war, because it has federal backing, frankly. Another question here from Daniel Del Monte. He said, Josh, why don't you think they care if illegal immigrants are vaccinated? Yeah, that's the $10 million question right there. Remember we went over this story not too long ago, that one of the reasons why they're not enforcing vaccinations on illegal immigrants coming into the U.S., one of the reasons why they're not making them get vaccinated is because of the possible legal implications of that. And I'm not making this up. This was official reports. They're afraid of being sued by the illegal immigration groups, folks, because again of possible health complications that might come about from the vaccinations. That's part of it, at least what they're stating publicly. The other big one is, frankly, if you're importing hundreds of thousands of people and you have large holding facilities, by every definition, if you believe the narratives, creating super spreader events and then trafficking them into the country and then doing like midnight flights into New York and all over the country. They're doing this. They admit they're doing it. Again, Jen Psaki has admitted this during White House press conferences that they're doing these flights. You can't traffic hundreds of thousands of people a month into the U.S. and not hold them in basically super spreader event facilities, and also try to enforce vaccinations and risk all these other issues and have it function. I mean, it's the logistics, and also keeping it silent somehow from the American people. The logistics are staggering with this. And then again, that's only what we can even measure. Who knows how much is going unregulated entirely. Briefly on that, you have two main groups illegally immigrating into the U.S., some pseudo-legitimately. Some are applying for asylum. When I was in Mexico, those were the groups we were watching. Basically, they just walk across the Rio Grande. They walk across the water. It goes up to about their knees. It's not deep water. And right on the other side, you have National Guard and other, sheriffs or whatever. You have them just sitting on the shore. We watched the National Guard, help them out of the water. They take them and they process them and they give them to these NGOs, and the NGOs just traffic them in. Basically, that's one group. Those are the people applying for asylum. And mainly that's Venezuelans, that's Cubans, and that's Haitians. Those are the three groups mainly allowed to apply for asylum. Actually, I spoke with some of the Cubans I mentioned previously. I spoke with a Cuban family that was legally entering the U.S., but applying for asylum. And frankly, I would say they had legitimate claims. I think what they told me is actually a lot of Cubans are planning to come here, but these folks were pretty strong anti-communists. And frankly, I'd say the more the merrier. With these, if they're anything like the folks I met, the more the merrier, because these folks were very anti-communist. And I think really we're looking to come here and really, be responsible citizens in this country. Not to say they're all like that, but the small sample, the Cubans, they seem to be like that. Venezuelans as well can get legitimate sanctuary status here. The Haitians, the people I've talked to, basically a lot of them will just tell you directly that they want to live off the government, basically. A lot of people I've talked to who interviewed them directly, they don't try to hide it. They don't really care. They just said, basically, we want to come to the U.S. and let the government take care of us. And so you do have different groups. Those are the ones applying for asylum. The second group are the ones traveling at night and so on. These are mainly the Mexican legal immigrants and the ones from Central America. A lot of those ones are the ones really trying to avoid getting caught. And they're the ones, traveling through farmland or whatever else, and they're trying to avoid police and so on. These are the two main groups. But again, the trafficking operation in the U.S. is kind of working hand in hand with both of these. You also, if you go on the Mexican side, scattered across the ground. I mean, just if you spent a whole day picking them up, you would not pick up even a small area. There were so many of them. There were ID cards, passports, driver's licenses, airplane tickets, you name it, documents, folders with, again, for the Mexican government, temporary passports with the UN logo on them, covering the ground. And it's because a lot of people crossing illegally were trying to hide their original country of origin because they plan to lie about this in order to get asylum. And the number of cases of this were staggering. Last question, then we'll jump into some more stories. This is from Lisa Lamb 135. He said, question, how do you account for all the unaccompanied minors? Did their parents send them, or were they unwillingly taken from their parents? Where do they end up when they get here? That is a big question. So a couple points on that. One, a lot of them lie about their age. So, you have guys who are like 25 or 30 saying, oh yeah, I'm like 17. Who's going to be able to tell their age? What are they going to do? Like do face reading? They're discarding their IDs. They're discarding any identifying documents. And because law enforcement is not allowed to work with ICE because of the sanctuary city policies, they can't get the international documents to figure out where they're from. They don't have that information. Meaning they can lie. You can have a 70-year-old guy telling you he's 12, and how are you going to prove he's not 70, that he's not 12 years old, right? How are you going to prove it? And so they know that if they say they're minors, they're going to get all these additional protections, all these additional programs. You have a lot of them lying about their age, and there's no way you can prove it. Again, because one, they discard their identifying papers, they discard their driver's licenses, they discard all these documents, and they're covering the ground on the Mexico side. The other side of it, one, is that also the human trafficking organizations under the cartel, the coyotes, under the cartels, they will use trafficked children with these groups because they can claim that they're families. And again, that was why Trump originally had the family separation policy, was because they were using kids for human trafficking. And they were doing DNA tests using saliva to determine whether the people with them were actually their legal guardians or parents. And they were finding a lot of times they were not related. The kids were being trafficked, which is why that policy was there. That's one side of it. The other side of it is actually the cartels, actually on the U.S. side and on other sides, they will actually call for people who are underage, like 16, 17-year-olds mainly, to become drivers for the trafficking operations, because if they get caught, it's not, again, if you're under the age of 18, you face much lower criminal charges. Again, you're charged as a minor. And so the charges for human trafficking for them are not as significant as would be for an adult, and they offer them a lot of money. They actually recruit those kids off of like TikTok and Snapchat and stuff like that. I'll get you more on this, folks. I have something in depth I'm working on with this. That said, I want to go over real quick a bit of what's happening in these other stories, because I mentioned that there's this U.S. vaccine passport system with some pretty serious ties to China. Now, the U.S. vaccine policies we're seeing adopt in the U.S. basically are based, and many parts of the world are based on the CCP's model. It seems like the CCP isn't just spreading its practices through its controlled network of influence, though. Again, the lockdowns, the mask mandates, these are the CCP's model. Even the vaccine passports, this began with the health codes the CCP was having on people's smartphones. We're following the Chinese Communist Party's model for dealing with this virus. Because again, this is the model promoted through the World Health Organization, which could not demonstrate independence from the CCP. Remember, that's why Trump pulled us out. That's what happened. We are following the CCP's model for dealing with this virus. But in addition to this, according to the National Pulse, one of the U.S. vaccine passport systems has direct affiliations with the CCP. It says this. It says the Vaccination Credential Initiative Charter describes itself as a coalition of public and private organizations committed to empowering individuals with access to verifiable clinical information. I won't go over this whole thing, but basically you have U.S. government agencies with this, military organizations, at the same time a lot of private companies, 350 partners signed up, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, Mayo Clinic, Walgreens, Walmart, several colleges, the states of Colorado, California, and New York, a lot of other groups. Just as one example of this, a lot of them have ties to the CCP. One example, the Commons Project, it says, is one of the main VCI member groups that could jeopardize the safety of digital global health and medical data. That's according to National Pulse. Because 3 different board members of theirs are trustees of the Commons Project. They operate businesses in China. And if they operate businesses in China, that means they can be held liable to Chinese law. And the Chinese Communist Party's national intelligence law states this directly, quote, all organizations and citizens shall support, assist, and cooperate with national intelligence efforts in accordance with law and shall protect national intelligence work secrets they are aware of. Meaning, if you're doing business in China, if you're a Chinese national, if you're a US citizen, remember the CCP has put even requirements that foreign companies, if you're a US company and you're operating in China and the CCP sanctions a US official, you as a US company, if you want to continue working in China, not face possible arrest, have to even enforce their sanctions against your own local official. The CCP is giving companies basically a decision. Are you a Chinese company or are you a company of any part of the world? If you're a Chinese company, you have to follow Chinese law. That means working with the CCP. That means supporting their sanctions. That means providing them with any data that is available to you. And if you don't, you get kicked out or you face possible arrest. And if you have, again, 350 organizations and several of which have these types of ties to China, and there are many more, I won't go over the whole thing, this does present a pretty serious national security threat. And again, if these vaccine mandate companies, the ones that are providing these health codes and so on, are working with them, all the data they're collecting is no longer secure because it only takes one individual on that network, if they have access to this information, to provide that to the CCP. Not to mention if the US government has a data sharing program with them, which seems to have in some regards. Now, we're a bit over time, but I want to go over real quick what happened with Ghislaine Maxwell. Folks, the jury has now determined that Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the associate of Jeffrey Epstein, who may or may not have killed himself, right? That she is guilty on all charges tied to sex trafficking. She is now facing decades in prison. But folks, the sentencing for that, we will not see it for a bit still, 2022, well, right around the corner now. But the charges she was found guilty on, she was found on count 1, which was conspiracy to entice minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. Conspiracy to transport minors with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity, conspiracy to commit sex trafficking of minors, and also the sex trafficking of minors. She was found guilty by the jury on all of those charges. The only count they did not find her guilty on was count 2. She was guilty on 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you go over the counts. Count 2, though, was the one she was not found guilty on, which was enticing of a minor to travel to engage in illegal sex acts. Now, important parts on this, she was found guilty for selling sex to elite individuals, whether financially elite or whatever, politicians, whatever, with young girls, underage girls. Who knows, it was limited to girls, but underage girls, children, minors. None of the people who purchased those things, because folks, she was found guilty with enticing minors to travel to engage in illegal sex acts, including engaging in illegal criminal sexual activity, including sex trafficking. Who was she trafficking them to? Who was she selling them to? Who was she conspiring to have them engage in these acts with? Well, we had some ideas of who was working on the Lolita Express. We have some ideas of who was on the roster because it was made public. We have some ideas of who was at Little St. John's, Epstein's Island, where these things were taking place. We know the names of these individuals. Are any of them going to be charged? Currently, it does not seem to be the case. In addition to this, what did the judge do? The judge said that they did not want the information going public. They sealed details about the individuals and a lot of the evidence that really could have been released on this, and it is not going to be made public. Now, we will see if anything happens in this in the future, but it seems like Ghislaine Maxwell right now is kind of the fall guy, so to speak. She seems to just be the fall guy for a very large human trafficking operation, child sex trafficking operation, where she was now found guilty selling sex with minors to elite individuals, we know based on Jeffrey Epstein's logbooks and alleged clients, that included some of the wealthiest business leaders in the world, many politicians, and many people who are very powerful on the global stage. Those individuals, it seems, are not being charged. The evidence against them is being sealed, it seems. And this is where things are at. Now, we'll see what happens when she is, again, sentenced. That has not happened yet, but this is where things are at with that. All right, folks, that said, it's getting late, so let's call it a night here. Oh, well, real quick as well. I mentioned, of course, we have Xi'an Creations on Epic TV. Now, if you haven't checked it out, I'll show you a trailer at the end of this video. It's beautiful music, great dance. The Xi'an Symphony Orchestra is also going to be doing a special full feature broadcast on Epic TV. That's going to be on January 2nd, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. There's not going to be playback on this, so be sure to tune in. 7 p.m. Eastern Time, January 2nd. Again, if you miss it, you're not going to be able to watch it online. You have to go to the theater if you want to watch it, but it's going to be doing a one-time play, full show on Epic TV. This is the Xi'an Symphony Orchestra. They also have the Xi'an main performance, which is the dance and everything like that. Beautiful stuff. You haven't seen it. And actually, those of you who don't know as well, when you get into Chinese medicine, and interestingly, the Chinese character for medicine is like very similar to the Chinese character for dance. If you go by the traditional characters, they say there's a lot of healing effects of this type of just good stuff. So check it out, folks. It's really beautiful stuff, really great stuff. That's going to be exclusive in Epic TV, January 2nd, 7 p.m. Don't miss it. And again, I'll show you a trailer at the end of this video as well of some of the Xi'an Creations productions. All right, folks, that said, again, I'm going to be doing just one Q&A a week going forward. That's going to be every Sunday, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll find a way to make it good. Don't worry. Also going to be focusing a lot more on really frontline interviews, getting you folks some really good information that I think needs to be out there. If you haven't already, again, check out the one to do with Representative Tiffany about how the U.S. government is running this human trafficking operation, basically facilitating it. I have some great ones coming out as well on technocracy, some of the stuff that's happening with these vaccine passports, a lot in the works. Also, I'm going to be dedicating a lot more time to be on the front lines, getting you folks some story, not just, I don't want to be a pack journalist, you know what I mean? Getting on the front lines again for y'all and really getting the stories that matter. I have actually a lot in the works already, and I'll be giving you some updates on that as well. That said, folks, Happy New Year. It's, we'll see how 2022 is, but I'll be here with you. Well, we're in this together. And folks, be sure to tune in again next time. Appreciate all of you. Please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.